I am live. Welcome everybody to Gadsden, Alabama Fishing Show and Expo. Thanks for Bucks Island for streaming these things. It's always fun to have those guys out here. And we're going to do a little sonar stuff this afternoon. I'm Mike Del Visco. I have been, I was out here at the show last year too. I kind of work with these guys and the people who do the East Tennessee Fishing Show, do a lot of media and stuff with them, but I also fish for a living. I've done it now for the last 42 years. And before that, I went to high school. So I've seen a lot of sonar technology over the years, you can imagine. From when we had just basic, simple flasher units to stuff that we've got today. Look at how much, stuff has changed over the last 10 years, never mind the last 40 years. And this particular seminar that I'm doing is going to combine a little bit of old school and a little bit of new school stuff. Because as much as I know about this technology, I've been teaching it for over 30 years in various forms at sports shows around the country and Bassmaster University. And I actually even have an online course, which I'll share with you guys when we're done. Things have changed an awful lot, haven't they? I remember, I'll tell you a real quick story and we'll get on with this. The first major event I ever fished was in 1982. It was the Bassmaster Invitational. So Roland Martins and Jimmy Houston's, all of Gary Klein's, all them guys fished it. And I was a senior in high school. And back in 82, we didn't have very good sonar graphs. We had flashers on our boats, maybe a simple little square thing like that showed you some stuff on the bottom. We certainly didn't have any maps. Our map system back then was take your paper map and put it on the floor of the boat, and I learned how to plexiglass it. Get a piece of plexiglass from a hardware store and drop it on there so it wouldn't blow out of the boat riding down the lake. And this particular tournament was, sorry Mike, this particular tournament was on Thousand Islands, so the St. Lawrence River that goes into Lake Ontario. And the second day of that tournament, I drew a guy named Joe Thomas out. And we've been buds ever since. And we rode 35 miles down the lake to go to this one bay, Chameau Bay. And he came to the hotel room and introduced himself to me that night. And I said, hey, Joe, where are we going to go fish? Because you flip a coin, see whose boat you would take the next day. He won the flip. So I said, okay, where are we going to go fish? And he says, Chameau Bay. And I hadn't heard of Chameau Bay. I said, where is that? He pulls a napkin out of his pocket with a little Sharpie drawing. Oh, it's right here. Go down the lake about 35 miles, turn around the first big point on your left, and there it is. Well, 3.5 hours later, the next morning of the tournament, we found Chameau Bay. I think we broke down once we got there, had to call the service truck come get us and fix us up so we could get back. But then we had to figure out how to go catch fish. You didn't just pull up anywhere and just start fishing. So there's a lot of old school technique with some new school stuff that I'm going to go over with you guys here in this little presentation to help you be a little bit better at your sonar stuff. Now, how many people are using forward-facing sonar right now? A couple people? Okay. So if you're not, you're going to get a lot out of this because I'm going to start with some really important yet basic stuff. 2D sonar is incredibly important. It's what I learned on. It's what we had 40 years ago. It's pretty much the basis for all type of sonar technology, whether it's downscan, side scan, live stuff, 360. If you understand cone angles and frequencies and how they affect what you're seeing and what you're actually seeing on the screen and how things appear, you'll understand everything else. So 2D is really important. I fished last week at Guntersville and had my first tournament of the season, did pretty good. Probably would have done a little better if I had one more day of practice. I could have figured out a few more things to help me catch a couple more fish, but I turned every forward-facing sonar transducer in my boat off. I didn't just turn them off, I disconnected them. I was fishing ultra shallow. I was using simple map and 2D, and that's it. I was looking for little hard spots in about 4 or 5 foot of water that would transition into spawning areas, and that's where I ended up catching them in the tournament. I went very, very old school on these fish. I never even turned that forward facing on because that ping was bothering those fish. I turn it off, I'd start getting bit. So 2D is important. Learning how to read a map is really important too. If you don't know where to go find one, I don't care how many graphs and how many transducers and how much money you spent for your gear and your boat, they're not going to magically appear because you turn your forward-facing sonar on. You can still find them. So learn reading maps, and there's some cool map stuff now that makes things a whole lot easier to try to find stuff, and I'm going to share that with you too. Helps you find productive areas. And then once you find that stuff, how do I become familiar with the spot? And kind of what I mean by that is as you fish through an area, and perfect example, I didn't even think about this until right now. The place that I fished last week at Gunnersville, I had it all to myself. I was surprised. I figured somebody else would find this same little stretch. It's nothing special. It is a mixture of grass. It was some hydrilla, it was some eelgrass, it was some pad stems, but it had a harder bottom. And it had some little detail going through it. And as I fished, and I'll tell you what, the second day of the tournament, actually the first day of the tournament, I stayed there quite a while. But the second day, I pulled up there and I caught a 6-pounder, a 5-pounder, and a 3.5 in the first 20 minutes. And I said, okay, I need 2 more bites the rest of the day. I stayed there till probably almost 1 o'clock. And I did get bit on some other stuff. I never caught another keeper out of there. And I don't know why. I mean, weather changed and stuff, but you know, there's different things that affect fish in different places. But the first day I kind of learned those key areas because I stayed there about 6 hours. And it was a spot that was maybe the whole length of this entire building, just one little stretch. And there was key little places where those fish would set up, little tiny hard spots. And if I didn't spend the time to become familiar, I wouldn't find those. So, and you can do that with every type of place that you go fish. So first thing, let's look at some 2D. And every single graph that you turn on, I don't care if it's a Humminbird, a Garmin, a Lowrance, will have frequency. You can go to your menu screen and you can tap that. If it's a Lowrance or a Garmin, you hit your menu screen, you will get frequency here. If you've got a Humminbird, you need to hit the menu button twice and scroll across the sonar and then get this drop-down menu. It's a little bit harder, but you can still find it. Frequency that transducer operates on. And you might see a bunch of different things. You might see 200 kilohertz, 83 kilohertz, or 50, or chirp frequencies. And basically what chirp does is it takes this particular frequency, so 200 is high, 83 is medium, and 50 is low, and it varies that frequency up and down so that when the fish get down in the grass, they get in the bait, they get in the cover, you can see them better. It's better target separation when you're using chirp sonar. So for the most part, almost everything I do, unless I'm using 2D sonar to drop shot or Daimiki rig or drop straight on the fish, I'm using 200 kilohertz. And I don't have the slide in here, but if I'm dropping on the fish and I would like to see my line coming from the top of the screen down to the fish, I will use 83 or medium chirp, depending upon the depth of the water. Because what happens with sonar frequency, when you go lower in frequency, the cone gets bigger. When you go higher in frequency, the cone gets smaller. So remember that in side scan, if you guys are using side scan too and you're not seeing stuff, there's a reason for that. And all it is math. So if you're in 40 foot of water and you've got your high definition side scan on and you're shooting a tiny little beam this way, the beam never gets to the bottom so you can see stuff. A totally different seminar, but that's a lot of the reason why that happens. So I like 200 or high chirp if I'm just looking around for stuff because I want pinpoint accuracy on those fish or that cover what I'm looking at. And to do the math, pretty simple. In 30 foot of water, because it's easy on the math. All the way down in the bottom, that circle is going to be about 10 feet. So knowing that little piece right there, you can figure out everything else. Maybe I'm not in 30 feet, maybe I'm in 15 foot of water. So if you're in 15 foot of water, now the bottom becomes 5 and not 10. But if I'm in 30 and I see a fish halfway up in 15, that fish is in a 5 foot zone. So it's all relative to the depth of the water, where you see stuff in the water column here, and the frequency that you've got. So that's the reason why I like 200 kilohertz, because I have pretty good accuracy on stuff that I see. So there it is right there. And obviously the closer you get to the boat here, the less stuff you're seeing. So stuff that's right under the boat, pretty darn close. And that affects a bunch of little things. Make this thing go forward. Some of which is what a fish looks like. And they could look like a variety of different things while you're out there fishing. And it really depends if I'm moving, idling around looking for stuff, or if I'm sitting here fishing. A fish will arch on your screen in one of two ways. Number one, you physically drive over those fish. You're in your boat, you're idling around, you're moving, the transducer moves, transducer drives over the fish arches like this, or like that. If you're sitting still and sometimes right on the front of your boat, those fish arches will go from arching or kind of rounded to straight. So I pay attention a lot to what they look like, and there's one little adjustment in every single fish finder on your 2D that will help you identify stuff a little bit better. And for those of you that are fishing with Lowrance stuff, it's called color line. And you can go to your menu screen, hit menu, see color line right here on the side. Typically, somewhere between 74 and 78% is a pretty good adjustment with your color line. And what color line does is it shades a little bit of red on top of harder objects. Garmin is menu, sonar, I think it's appearance. Yeah, it's appearance and then advanced, and it's called color gain. +2, +3. That's where that looks the best. Humminbird machines, it's a combination of sensitivity and contrast. So most of your Helix machines will come at a 0 to 20, set at 10. So I would go up to 12 on sensitivity, down to 6 or 7 on my contrast. That's where you get that pretty good balance. And all I'm trying to do is shade a little bit of red on that harder substance. So that helps with not only hard bottom like this rock or this little tiny transition right here, but your fish. So wherever I see go over groups of fish and they're really big and pronounced and have a lot of red in them, probably not a bass. If I see stuff like these are probably a little bit too big, especially that one, that's a pretty big arch right there to be a bass. That one might be, but it could be a catfish too. A lot of times I'm looking for smaller, thinner arches for bass. But when I tend to slow down and I'm not moving anymore, those lines are going to straighten out and they're going to appear kind of like that. So those are probably bass. At least that little patch right there. A little bit thinner lines, thinner arches. That's probably a catfish or a carp. Big line, pretty big line right here. But you see what's happens from this little stretch right here is that one arches, but that one kind of thins out, and that one really thins out. So they straighten out. That's because when you stop and you kind of come to more of an idle and you get up the front of your boat where you're fishing, you're not driving over those fish anymore. They're not passing through the cone, so they're not going to arch. So the color line setting, that's too big to be a bass. Carp, catfish, something. Crappie will usually always look round and blotchy, kind of how they look. Stripers will be kind of noodly, like spaghetti on your screen. Bass will be smaller groups, sort of like that. So it's all in that interpretation and all in that color line's a really important setting for a lot of things. So I'm going to stop this here, right? This was pretty cool. This is this was about 15 years ago. No, maybe not 15, probably 12. And I was doing an article for a magazine for drop shot fishing. And I picked a place where there pretty much was nothing, pretty featureless bottom, nothing going on in the screen, pretty clear water, about 20 some odd feet of depth. And the only thing I wanted, I had a camera guy in the back shooting a picture over my shoulder, looking at my graphs. And I wanted to see my line on the screen and me jumping the line up and down so you could see it. So you almost see it starting to come down right here. And down it goes. There's my line, fiddling around with a couple things, shake, 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 shake. And he's just rolling video so he can take some still pictures off of this. And I pretty much got what I need already until that happens right there. I am sitting still. I am not moving. There's no wind. Boat's not moving anywhere. It's about as good as an arch as you're going to see sometimes. I'm going to advance this one more second here just so you can see it. That's a pretty darn good arch sitting there. So if you took everything I just told you guys, 200 kilohertz, I think it's about 22 foot of water is what that was, 22.2 or something like that. So if you did the quick math, 7 feet down here, 3.5 right there, 1.25 right there, or 1.75 right there. It's a small space, and it's clear water. So what happened was that fish, I dropped my bait down, jerking it up and down, trying to get a picture. He sees it. He's swimming, and it may have been over there, over here, could have been under the boat, who knows, somewhere in that circle. Swim into the cone. Fish arches totally like that on my screen. And what do you think I'm going to do? I am going to catch him. Shake, 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 shake. You see my bait go down right to the fish. Boom, set the hook. Live scope before live scope was live scope. I've had that happen a lot of times, but I've never had it when the fish really arches like that on the screen. You'll see flat lines and stuff like that. You pull up to a spot where you're going to drop shot on some 2D. You see some brush, you see some lines, you see stuff on your screen. You drop your bait down, your bait goes down to them like that, and you may see them jumble around a little bit before you get bit. But I've never had one do what that fish did. That thing wanted to get caught. Not a bad fish either. Really clear water. Fish saw my bait, swim in. I dropped in front of him, ate it. Before live scope ever existed. So when they say you can't do that on something simple, you can. You just need to understand what you're looking at. Which brings me to the good old days. I used to, and I still do have notebooks in the boat and paper maps, and I even carry some marker buoys every now and then. I remember when spot lock trolling motors first come out, and that was, saved you a lot of time and being able to fish offshore. We didn't really have quite the technology we have now with forward-facing sonar to be able to really spot lock and put your scope on something and look at it. But we could, save waypoints and things like that and use our side scan and, find places. And, for me, it would be, making some notes in a notebook and correlating them with a map. And, especially I can remember being on Lake Lanier, fishing brush piles and locating brush piles. And I'd have a whole notebook full of stuff with, this house and this tree and this point and things like that, where I would, mark some stuff down and then use my marker buoys when I started to catch fish. The cool thing about now is that, and we'll see this as I get along, is that you can take stuff on your map physically on your screen, and you can do all of this stuff that I used to have to write down right on your screen to make you more effective out in the water. So when I'm looking at contour lines, for example, the obvious place to stop when we're looking for a place is where those contour lines are closer together because it's a sharper drop. It's an easier way for me to make use of this little spot right here. Not to say that there won't be fish all out on this big flat where these lines are further apart, but that's the easiest place to go catch one quick. There may be one brush pile over here, a rock over there, a stump over there, something that I'll use my side scan with after, but here's where I would pull up and start making some casts first. One of the coolest things that's happened, I think, in being able to find like the sweet spot, and we call this like the pattern within the pattern, or where's the area that you want to focus on, and it's having the ability to color shade your maps. Now you can do this with all three brands. However, Humminbird is a little bit harder to do unless you've got, I think they have a new map card that you can actually get more color range out of. The Garmin, you can go in through your layers and through your map and go to depth shading and be able to shade, a dozen different depth layers with color. Lowrance, you can do kind of the same thing. And all I'm doing here is I'm going to go through and set 4 or 5 little colors up just so you can see. And we're getting the depth, we're getting the color, and then we're setting it at that so that we can see those contour lines in different shades of color. And the more closer the detail is, the better you'll be at being able to find stuff. Now, I didn't do what I typically do. I'll usually go about 12 colors, and I'll start with red, and I'll go 5-foot red, 7-foot yellow, 9-foot orange, 12-foot green, and so on up to 20 some odd feet. So when I go and I apply this to my map, instead of just staring at all these contour lines finding stuff, I can get everything in color. So when I go ahead and turn my shading on and go to my depth 1, now my color in my map kind of comes to life so I can find stuff. And there's one little, get my hand out of the way there, we'll be all set. Right there. Looking at that map, that's the spot right there. This is kind of like a little drainer funnel that comes in. Contour line, really tight little pinch point coming in. Flat out here, deeper out here. A couple flats out here on this edge right here, but a little hump right there. I think I did 5 foot was yellow, so we got a little 5-foot hump, a drop right here, a flat right there, little pinch point where those fish will congregate. Not hard to find, is it? Once you apply all these colors to your map. This is where I really try to take some time to go find stuff that other people might not want to find. I want to find, one rock, one stump, one piece of brush, the one little transition between hard and soft bottom out in the middle of nowhere. Maybe that's why nobody found this little spot on Guntersville. I didn't win on it, but I had a real good tournament on it, and it was just really subtle little stuff that others might not taken the time to go fish, given the fact that it looked the same as everything else on that lake. So having colors on your map, really, really cool thing to be able to do. And then you can go to your map and find stuff, and the more you zoom in, once you get out in the water and start looking at things, you get more and more detail, and you can just drive around and find these underwater points, channels, and ditches and drains and all this stuff, and just start idling around and looking for things. And a lot of it's pretty easy to do. You just drive around and start looking for stuff. I want to find, like I said, things are just a little bit different, that take a little bit more time to find. I tend that places like that will reload a little bit better. You'll have them to yourself. You won't have to share them with anybody. But you can do a lot of cool things on your map now that we couldn't do probably 15 years ago. And you can find individual little stuff on your side scan. The cool thing about all this stuff is that you don't even need to be on your map screen to save a waypoint. You can just tap your side or tap your down or tap your 2D and save a waypoint and bring this little screen up. And I think Lowrance does this better than anybody, that I've got my entire window box right here that I can customize and edit everything right there without having to go back in the machine and doing it later. So I can tap on number 67. I might not remember what 67 is a year later, but if I tap on it and bring up a keyboard, I can go ahead and call it something like rock, stump, boat dock, drop, brush pile, whatever it might be. And then I do like the round circle for my structure because they show up better on the map. But then I've got colors. I got blue, purple, red, yellow, green, turquoise, white. Lowrance gives you 7 round ones. Garmin gives you 4 round ones. Humminbird gives you 2 round ones. The more colors I've got, I can separate. Or you could do all icons. The problem with doing all icons, the problem with doing everything in a different icon is you got to remember what everything is. Yeah, but what I'm saying now, you got to remember what, and then I got to sit there and stare at my screen and say, well, what is that? Is that rock or grass? Because the icons are about that big. If I use a round circle and I color code it and I go, boat docks are blue, points are purple, rocks are red, green is grass. All I got to do is look at my colors. I don't even have to read what it is. So it just lets me be a little bit more functional out in the water. And I can save all my waypoints accordingly like that. And that's kind of how I do it. Oop, here we go. Now, I do not have this particular slide in here, but where I would use a marker buoy years ago, if I didn't have spot lock on my trolling motor, I would always save my boat position with a marker buoy. So if I didn't have spot lock 15 years ago and I'm catching fish, I've got my triangulation, so I've got points of land that I'm actually seeing my structure on, and I'm fishing. I catch a fish, drop a marker buoy right next to the boat. Before I leave, I might not pick that buoy up if I'm going to come back to it, or I might pick it up and come back later. But now you can just save another icon. This is when I use the icons. And it's the only other icon I'll use. I'll go ahead and hit my waypoint, and I'll go, Lowrance has a stop sign, so I'll use a stop sign for that. Humminbird and Garmin have a kind of a yellow triangle that looks pretty good. That will usually be my boat position. So when I come back and I want to fish that one brush, one rock, one stump, I pull up to my saved boat waypoint, get my triangulation, make my cast. Helps me be a lot more efficient. And if you can think about maybe fishing a Tuesday nighter and you've got 3 hours to fish and you've got 5 spots, if it takes you 10 minutes to line up on every spot, if you hadn't done all this, you just wasted 50 minutes of your fishing time. So just use those little tools in your graphs to help you be a lot more efficient on the water. Now it's just a matter of using your 360 if you've got it, or using your forward-facing sonar if you've got it, lining up on that waypoint and pointing it at the fish and trying to figure out how to make them bite. I don't use 360 a lot, but it is pretty useful. We'll do a little bit on this forward-facing stuff. This is, so obviously forward right here. These fish were dumb, okay? I'm just going to tell you that right now. It doesn't happen this easy sometimes out in the water. These things wanted to bite. I typically don't like to see them that suspended. This was kind of summery time. I'd rather catch them when they're a little closer to the bottom. But angles of where you cast and where you present your bait to the fish is probably the most important thing, and your range that you're looking out. Now, I've seen over the last year, things change a little bit. The more fishing pressure these fish get, the more people fish for them. I can't draw them fairly close to the boat and catch them. These were northern fish, so then I'm probably sure they have not heard much of this stuff pinging on their heads. But usually my range is right in there someplace, 40 to 60 feet. If I'm fishing, I want to see them out here. They will be more hash marked out here and a little more fish-like as they get closer to the transducer. But I try not to pull them this way. So if the fish are out here, I don't want to throw in front of them and pull them that way. I want to throw them back of them and try to get the bait to come down into them, which is what will probably happen right here. Get ready to go bite. There's all, and the more you look at this stuff, the better you'll get at it. You know, where they need to be positioned to catch them. Do you let the bait fall past them and watch what they do? I learn a whole lot more with this technology and how the fish behave, as opposed to just seeing a whole pile of fish on my screen. I'm going to catch every one of those because it just doesn't happen a lot of times. You got to really try to trick those fish into biting. Do I keep the bait above their head? Do I let it fall past them? Do I let it, go down to the bottom and see if they'll follow it down? Just little things like that. Speed of drop, colors, speed of retrieve, all these different things. It's just going to come with experience the more you throw at it. The one thing that I can tell you though is that you're not looking at much when you're looking forward. It's not like a big giant. You're not going to see way out there. It's pretty pinpoint. If you learn to cast with this technology, that'll probably be your best thing. And pick a bridge or a boat dock or something that you could physically see with your eyes and point your scope at it and learn casting distance. That will help you quite a bit when they get out here in the open, how far you need to cast to catch them. Evidently don't need to cast too far to catch this one right here because he's going to bite it. It was about 30 feet, I guess. I don't. I've got some buddies that use it and love it. I've just never played with the thing yet. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I guess that's pretty high power ping too, with the wave. Yeah. Yeah. Right. It's supposed to attract them more than repel them. Mm-hmm. It'll fire them up. Yeah. 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 I think the last time that I actually saw something was when Jacobson was down in Santee, and he had idled through a little pad of bed, lily pad beds, and the bluegills were popping and stuff, and he turned his hydro wave on, and he could intensively saw more and more fish popping, and that's kind of how he picked his area to go fish. Um, Years ago, a lot of them guys used to, cranking ledges and stuff on Kentucky Lake. Almost got through this whole thing without dying, but that's when. But I haven't heard a whole lot of people using it now. So, yeah, yep, mm-hmm. So, Hmm. Yeah, so my 360 is the Lowrance one, and it's a little bit more limited than the. I mean, obviously the Hummingbird's awesome because you can continuously sweep while you're fishing. Um, the Lowrance model, you can only use it while you're engaged in 360 mode with your trolling motor. So I'll pull up to an area and I might make a sweep and save a couple of waypoints on my screen just so I've pinpointed some stuff that I found and throw at, and then turn it off and turn my my active target on it and go point it at them at that point. So it's a little bit more limited that you can't use it while your trolling motor's engaged. So it's just the way that product is. You could do you could run a Hummingbird on it, but mine's on a Ghost trolling motor, so that's the only option that you've got on that. It's built into the housing of the trolling motor, so the trolling motor's got to move for it to work. Yeah, it's not a separate transducer; it's actually in the housing. So, um, one last little thing you can do out, is change your angles. Um, I do this quite a bit, and I did it, although I did it in shallow water in Gunnersville last week, because once I had my little waypoints of where these fish were in shallow water, I would approach it from different angles, even though they were in a couple of foot of water, because I didn't want them to get them to see my bait coming the same direction the entire time. And that's whether they're deep fish or shallow fish. They get accustomed to seeing it. I caught a couple of key fish just changing up angles a little bit. And you can do that out in deep water and think of, 360 degrees worth of angles that you can get, trying to exploit those fish and catch a few more of them. And that's where that little deal with saving your boat angle, saving your boat position comes in. Because if you get on them from the other side, especially if you're like cranking or maybe throwing a Carolina rig in the spring and you've been throwing at them like this, and you've caught 4 or 5, and you go ahead and you change your angle totally, and you come back this way and start throwing it like that, and you start catching them again, save your boat position again with a stop sign or a cone, and then you've got 2 different boat positions to come. Because anytime you can get that bait to come and back of their head like this or that way, you're going to trigger those fish to try to bite. It's when they get a good look at it coming straight on that they're going to get harder to catch. So just some little tricks, things that you guys can do to save yourself out in the water, but you don't need to have forward-facing sonar to do it. You can do it with the tools that we've had forever. Let that scroll through. I do have, I got a cool little project I started working on about 6 months ago. It's been out since November or so, and it is a online sonar course that I've got, and it's got a bunch of stuff that I've talked about here, but a bunch more. And I'm kind of having fun with it. We're shooting it all in video. We're putting it all together, and it is online. It is all video based. It is 32 different lessons right now. It's mobile, so you can bring it out in the boat with you and keep it right on your cell phone and watch. The worst thing I hate is, and I do this trying to learn other brands, different functions and features and stuff, and going to YouTube and getting 37 minutes of something that I don't want to get to 30 seconds that I might want. So all the lessons that I did them real specific. So there's one just on frequency, there's one just on hard bottom, there's one just on fish arches, stuff like that. But it goes through 2D, down scan, side scan, 360, live stuff on the water, mapping. And that is this course right here. I'm making a new one right now. I'm working on it, and it's called 4 Seasons of Sonar, which will take you out in the water all 4 seasons. So spring will be the first one, and then summer, and then fall, and then winter. All good bass fishing patterns using sonar to help you guys catch and find and have more fun out there fishing with your sonar stuff. This is the absolute last show of my season, and this is the last place I'm doing this. I've got some cards up here. It's got a QR code and a link. Click on it. The whole deal is $49. Scan the code, you get save $20. You get both courses. That one's probably, I'm about 2 weeks from having the first module of this one done, and that one's already up right now. I update them too, like new technology comes out, you'll get an update. Say, hey, Mike added new lessons to your course. You'll get those for free too. I cover all 3 brands, so we cover Birds, Garmin's, and Lowrance's, mobile friendly, and kind of a fun thing. I've been having a lot of fun with it. It's been going really good so far. So if you guys want one of those cards, come up and grab them. If you got any more specific questions, let me know. I'll be hanging around here to show the rest of the day. Appreciate you hanging in there with me, and have yourselves a good season fishing. Thanks. And if